Fridays, and I'm your host, Cecilia TRESHA. The Warma radio program is aimed at bringing Warma close to you and getting to know what they're all about. And on today's program, our focus is on the regulatory framework for borehole drilling. The objective of this particular series is to enlighten the public about drilling requirements, standards, and the dispute resolution process. This program is live on 5FM Radio Zambia Facebook page and the 5FM Radio Zambia YouTube channel. It's live on Radio Garden, on Radio Box, and on Simple Radio. To help us understand more about the regulatory framework for borehole drilling, we are joined in studio by Mrs. MISOZI NGULUBE Lumpa, who's Director, Legal and Corporate Affairs and Authority Secretary. Good morning, Mrs. Lumpa, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
All right. To get started, tell us more about Warma.
All right. Warma is a statutory body that's created by an Act of Parliament, number 21 of 2011, to manage, protect, conserve water resources countrywide. We focus on both ground and surface water. More particularly, we have specific functions that are given to us by the law. First of all, we collect hydrological data through our infrastructure. We have gauging stations dotted around the country. That information is very important. For instance, when someone is constructing a dam or bridges, that information is important to ensure integrity of the infrastructure. I'll give you an example of Kazungula Bridge. For it to be there and to stand the test of time, we need to make available that data to the constructors to ensure that it's done properly. Another function that we do, we assist in the prevention of loss of life by forecasting floods with a lead time of 30 days. And we focus on river floods. So we're able to tell people that, oh, there's likely to be a flood in 30 days' time. Can you relocate? And we work with Disaster Management Unit and Zambia Meteorological Department. Yes.
Okay. So there's the issue of permits to drill.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is a permit to drill and when is it required?
Okay. So in addition to the many other functions I spoke about, we also regulate borehole drilling and drillers. So a permit to drill is authorization to you, if you are a landowner of whether it's traditional land or statutory land, for you to drill a borehole. Because, you know, we need to monitor the levels of groundwater. So if you are going to abstract water from the ground, we need to know that you're doing it and in which way you're doing it. And the requirements for you to obtain a permit, first of all, you need to give a notice to drill to Warma, and you need to submit certain documentation. If you have a title deed, if the land is on, to give consent from a traditional, if it's traditional land. And also, one important requirement is to ensure that you also have a borehole siting report by a registered hydrologist with Warma, who's hydrogeologist with Warma, who's qualified to do that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So why is it important to obtain a permit to drill?
It's very important to obtain a permit to drill because in the statutory instrument that regulates groundwater, the Warma SI number 20 of 2018, there are certain requirements that we put in place. First of all, we need to make sure that where you're drilling a borehole, it's not close to a pollution source.
Okay.
There are certain distances that are in place. For instance, you cannot drill a borehole within 30 meters of another borehole, within 50 meters of a fueling station, for instance. You can't drill a borehole within 500 meters of a gravesite because we do not want, ultimately, for you to drink contaminated water. Another important thing is to also give you value for your money, because we are going to prevent you from, if you get a registered hydrogeologist to site the borehole, we're going to ensure that we reduce the risk of drilling a dry borehole.
Okay. Okay, so hence the importance of siting, right?
Yes.
So what type of siting is required by Warma?
So the type of siting that is required by Warma is we require you to get like I said, a registered hydrogeologist
Yeah.
who's qualified, and they should make sure they use modern methods of siting.
Okay.
We do not encourage the copper wire and using bottles, because that is, it's a bit like guesswork. And when they site a borehole for you, they should be able to estimate the depth of where the water will be found.
Okay.
That also kind of reduces the cost for you, because you already agree with the driller that, okay, if the estimated depth is 70 meters, this is the cost. But if you do not do that, you get that quotation that will say 50 meters, you pay 13,000. Every meter you have to pay this much. But if you sited the borehole, you should be able to even demand to the driller that, look, I want a complete quote, which is transparent. I don't want to get a quote that is uncertain, because ultimately, if the costs keep on going up, you can find that you had planned to drill a borehole at 15,000, and later on they tell you, oh no, we found the water at 120 meters. You're now going to pay 30,000. Where would the extra money come from? So that's another important reason why you need that process.
Okay. Okay, so now just kindly enlighten the public on the price or the cost of drilling.
Okay, so in terms of the cost of drilling, first of all, what I need to mention is that a borehole is required to last about 20 to 30 years.
Okay.
So the cost of drilling a borehole is not cheap per se. It depends on various factors. First of all, as Zambia is a free market economy, as a regulator, we do not tell drillers that quote 15,000 or quote 20,000. It also depends on where you're drilling the borehole from, how much fuel is going to be used. Approximately, you need 400 liters of diesel to drill a borehole of about 50 meters depth, and about twice that much for 100 meters depth. Another important cost is, as one of our, I'll talk about this later, one of our requirements is for you to case the borehole from bottom up so that it doesn't collapse in the lifetime of the borehole. So those pipes, it would depend. If they are PVC pipes, the cost differs. If you are required to do steel casing because the soil formation is not very good, that actually increases the cost drastically. That's where now, if you didn't ascertain the depth of the bore, you start fighting with the driller.
Okay. All right. So supposing there was a removal of the fees, what would the implications of removal of borehole fees be?
Okay. So what it is before 2021, you were required to pay a 250 kwacha for the permit to drill that we require you to obtain. That was scraped off in a quest to reduce the cost of borehole drilling. So now the implication is that you are still required to come to Warma and obtain a permit to drill, so that we get that information. We do collect that information. First of all, we are also developing a map. Like for Lusaka, we've managed to develop a map where you are able to have an idea that in this area, the borehole depth is 60 meters. So we want to do that countrywide. So we need that information from the public as we continue to develop groundwater.
Okay.
So the requirement is still there. Do not be cheated by a driller who will say, now they've scrapped this off, let's just go and drill. You will also be in problems as a participant in illegality.
All right. Okay, in case you're just joining us, we're on the Warma first episode of the Warma radio program, and today we're talking about the regulatory framework for borehole drilling, and the objective is to enlighten the public about drilling requirements, standards, and the dispute resolution process. This program is live on the 5FM Radio Zambia Facebook page and the 5FM Zambia YouTube channel, on Radio Garden, on Radio Box, and on Simple Radio. And our studio guest is Mrs. MISOZI NGULUBE LUMPA, who's Director, Legal and Corporate Affairs and Authority Secretary. Okay, so moving on, Mrs. Lumpa, what are the drilling standards imposed by Warma?
Thank you very much for that question. So we have a statutory instrument on groundwater and boreholes, statutory instrument number 20 of 2018. So it requires that when you engage a driller to do works for you, they must ensure that the borehole is cased from top to bottom. This is to ensure that your borehole does not collapse during the lifeline of the borehole. Sometimes you find that a driller, this used to happen in the past, where they'll say, no, those requirements from Warma are very stringent and expensive. So let's just case it halfway. And of course, with hard times where money is hard to come by, you agree and say, okay, let's proceed in this direction.
And save some money.
And save a bit of money. But cheap is expensive, because in the long run, you come and say, my bore has collapsed. When your bore has collapsed, you will need to drill another one. Now, you would have saved cost by ensuring that the borehole is cased from top to bottom. Another requirement is that, because when you are drilling, the driller is also required. We also regulate the drillers themselves. I'm sure in our series we'll explain that further. The driller is required to have the right personnel, qualified hydrogeologists, to make sure that these things are done. They must also install a gravel pack between the soil and the end of the casing. This acts a bit like a filter, so that you prevent that earth or particles, soil particles, from being sucked when the water is being pumped by your submersible. So it acts as a filter. And also it must be plugged at the bottom for the same reason, that this is earth. After some time, it can loosen up. You do not want later on to start getting brown water. Sometimes you hear people complain, oh, my borehole is now just sucking brown water. What's happening? Sometimes it could be they did not plug it at the bottom. Another requirement that we have is that the driller must not just drill a borehole and move on. They must develop the borehole. And by that, we mean they must ensure that they flush the borehole, so that by the time they are leaving, the clean water is coming out, ready for use. They shouldn't tell you that, oh no, this water after 3 days, that's when you do clear, and you let them go. No, that shouldn't happen. Another requirement that we have is that the driller must conduct a pumping test at the end of the drilling. And this pumping test helps you determine the rate of water that comes out per second or per minute. And that will assist you in getting the right pump. You do not want to get a big pump or a small pump. Another important requirement that the driller must do, when they are done, they must give you a borehole completion report, because you also need that report to go and get the right size of the pump. And that borehole completion report is also submitted to Warma, so that we get that information that I spoke about, and we're able to know water in this area is at this level.
Wow. That's a handful, but it's a process, so it needs to be followed. So what are the most common complaints made against drillers received by Warma from the public?
So one of the most common is you pay someone and then you hit a dry borehole. That is very painful, believe you me. I once drilled a dry borehole. I was thinking about it for days. I was not sleeping. That's one of the most common complaints. And when you are agreeing with a driller on the commercial clauses, you must agree that if we hit a dry borehole, this is the amount that will be paid. However, what also reduces that risk is drilling using a registered hydrologist, and also ensuring that you do that report before you commence the works. That also reduces. Another complaint is you've drilled a borehole 2 years later, because maybe the development of the borehole wasn't properly done, the borehole collapses. And if you are in an area where there is no water, if the borehole collapses, you immediately need to ensure that you drill another borehole that will stand the test of time. And that's cost for you, which could be avoided. The most common causes of that, like I indicated, is failure to case all the way bottom up and down. Another common complaint is where if you don't agree on the commercial terms, you must be taught, even when you're going into a shop to buy something, you know that bread is 500 kwacha. It does not change at some point in time. So sometimes you and the driller will agree, okay, this boho is 15,000 kwacha. Now, because of that not having a proper sighting, after 50 meters, you're told now per meter it's 300.
An additional.
Per casing, it's so much. Now, when you do the calculation, if you find the water at 90 meters, it will even be more expensive than the initial price.
Yeah.
So that also causes serious conflicts. Also, unclear water being discharged after the driller has left site. So you must also ensure that by the time they are leaving, there's clear water coming out. Because even when they leave, it's very difficult for them to come back. These people are also in business. So those are some of the most common complaints that we receive.
Ever received a complaint of where by the time the driller is leaving, the water is clear, but after some time it changes color? Do you ever receive such complaints?
Yes, it does happen. Okay. And sometimes it's also, most of the times you attribute it to the failure to plug and also the failure to case properly. That because now, if you haven't cased properly, the integrity of the borehole is compromised.
Okay.
After some time, when the earth moves, whatever happens under the rocks here, the quality of the water changes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so in this case, what is the procedure for filing a complaint relating to borehole drilling?
Okay. So the first step, when you have a cause for complaint, sometimes it reduces a lot of work for you, is to approach the driller, first of all, and tell them, oh, I'm having this problem. You drill the borehole for me. I'm having this problem. Are you able to sort it out? If you do not receive any positive response, just tell the driller that I'm going to report you to Warma. And most of the times when you tell them you will report them to Warma, you will find by noon they are on site because they are in business and they need that drilling license going for the next year.
Yeah.
So if they have certain complaints, we are reluctant to renew their drilling license for the next year. So now when you talk to them, there's no fruitful outcome, you need to write to Warma, to the Director General's office, registering your complaint and explaining the complaint. And when you do that, Warma at some point will ensure that they mediate over the matter to the benefit of both parties.
Okay. Yes. All right. Okay, in case you're just joining us, we are on the Warma radio program, and today we're talking about regulatory framework for borehole drilling, and we're joined by Mrs. MISOZI NGULUBE LUMPA, who's Director, Legal and Corporate Affairs and Authority Secretary. We'll take a very short break, and we continue talking Warma on the other side.
I shouldn't be taken to court because I didn't throw out a chamber that you can throw out. Because you know what I mean? Or because, there's certain things that even as women, we know we're supposed to do and we do them. And it's always easier to submit to an authority that respects you, to an authority that appreciates you. Yes. So let's not forget the fact that we are one. I'm your partner. And if I'm treated as such, these things come quite easily. They do. Inside breakfast.
Welcome back to the Warma radio program, and yes, it's the first episode of 13 series, and we're talking about regulatory framework for borehole drilling, where we're to enlighten the public about drilling requirements, standards, and the dispute resolution process. And in case you have any questions or any clarification that you'd like to get with regards to your borehole or what has been talked about, and you'd like Mrs. Lumpa to address those concerns, you can phone on 0955221515 or send us a text to 0761912493, and that's only Warma related concerns. All right, and so still talking Warma. What is the role of Warma in the dispute resolution process between the drillers and the consumers?
Yes, thank you very much. So as Warma, what we do is we regulate both the drilling process, and we interface with the consumers themselves and also the drillers themselves.
I'll ask you to hold your thought. We have a caller. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Your name and where.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, your name and where you're calling us from?
My name is Patrick Banda. I'm calling you from Pamwena Menu.
Yes, Patrick, can go ahead.
Yes, I had an encounter with the Warma people. I think their requirement for a borehole and a septic tank, the distance between the two, I was told it's supposed to be something like 30 meters.
Yes.
So now when we were building, our neighbor was also putting up a septic tank near my borehole. And I involved the Warma people to come and do an inspection and possibly advise my neighbor that where he was putting up a septic tank, it was too close to my borehole. They came and did some inspection, and they agreed that it was too close. That was before my neighbor finished his septic tank. So I thought maybe they were going to advise him to try and find another place which was far away from my borehole. They promised that my neighbor, that never happened. I came to the office in Longacres there, trying to get some attention from them. It was just promises, up to date. Nothing has happened. My neighbor went ahead and put his septic tank about 15 meters from my borehole. So now I'm wondering whether really Warma does what they say you just do. And by then they had even asked us to pay 250 for the borehole. I think it was a borehole levy or something like that. Oh. But nothing came out of my complaint. So sometimes I always wonder whether our people are serious with what they advertise. Oh. I pushed that as far as I could, but nothing came out of it until I gave up. So right now, I don't know whether my borehole is contaminated with that septic tank. I do not know.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for coming through.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. It's quite unfortunate that you did not receive active attention on that particular matter. But since you are wondering if your borehole is contaminated or not, I think we'll be able to follow both. We can follow up both fronts. I think you should still come to our office. What I would like to explain with the technicality of the law is I think it's a lacuna that we have also noted as Warma. The law provides certain minimum distances between someone who wants to do a borehole and a septic tank. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it does not prevent someone who wants to put a septic tank close to a borehole that's already existing. In deliberate terms. That's a lacuna we've noted. Mm-hmm. But still, we have powers under the law to ensure that we prevent water pollution of such sorts. So I think we'll still be able to follow it up. It's just quite unfortunate that nothing happened about that. You can follow this matter up with our office at Longacres or the Kafue catchment.
All right. Okay, we're still on the Warma radio program, and in case you have a question or concern, you can call on 0955221515 or send a text to 0761912493. All right, so before we got the call, you were explaining to us the role of Warma in the dispute resolution process between drillers and the consumers.
Yes, I was. Thank you very much. So our role is a bit mediatory. First of all, as a regulatory body, we want to ensure that we are transparent and we apply fairness to both parties. Mm-hmm. So when one side has written and indicated their complaint, we call both parties for a meeting to discuss. And depending on what each side is saying, we'll come up with a workable solution that could work for both parties.
Okay.
Because sometimes you find that a consumer complains, oh no, Warma drilled a driller came, they drilled my bore is like this and this. When themselves sometimes they will team up with a driller and waive that requirement that proper sighting should be done.
Okay.
So for us, we want to protect both sides. We'll call them and listen to both of them and come up with a workable solution.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll tell them, okay, you refund this person by this extent. Sometimes it will be go and drill at no further cost, or a little additional cost will be added because obviously they went and drilled, but they'll need fuel to go back and redo the work. So we try to be fair at all times and as reasonable as we can be in the circumstances.
Okay. All right. And what is your appeal or final message to the public?
So our appeal and final message to the public is ensure that you report any wrongdoing by any person that can threaten whether it's development of water resource or any pollution like the gentleman did. If there's any wrongdoing, please still approach us. There will be also circumstances when, as an institution, we didn't follow up, but we would like you to still have faith in us because we are managing water resource, which is a public good, on behalf of the Zambian people. Also, we would like to urge consumers to ensure that the requirements that are placed, they can be a little bit burdensome, but try as much as possible to comply with them because that is what we use to protect you if anything goes wrong. So it's important that the tag teaming that we have seen and experienced as a regulator, sometimes between the consumers and the drillers, in the end, when they differ, it will be he said, she said, we discussed this, these other people are also saying, no, they were not willing to pay the simple 2,000 for that sighting. So we just went and did guesswork. That's why we have a drive home.
Okay. All right, Mrs. Lumpa, thank you so much for gracing the first episode of the Warma radio program.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so that's the Warma radio program. Today we're talking about, it's the first series of 13 episodes, and we're talking about the regulatory framework for borehole drilling. And the objective was to enlighten the public about drilling requirements, standards, and the dispute resolution process. Remember, this program is aimed at bringing Warma closer to you and getting to know what Warma is all about. Do join us again next week on Friday at 8:10 and for all sorts of issues concerning Warma, and make sure you stay tuned in. This program was live and will continue to be live every Friday on the 5FM Radio Zambia Facebook page and the 5FM Zambia YouTube channel, on Radio Garden, on Radio Box, and Simple Radio. Until next week, Friday, this has been CECILIA, TRESHA. On the other side, Lucy and Esnat continue as we wrap up the dessert segment of the A-Side Breakfast Show.
Together, we can end period poverty.
Did you know that the number of girls enrolling into schools has increased since the free education policy was introduced?
Did you also know that majority of girls miss about 20% of their school year because they do not have what to use during their menstrual period?
And that most girls drop out of school for that same reason?
But we can all be part of the solution to ending this problem
by joining 5FM Radio's